thank you for doing this.
Yeah, look, I mean, when I heard a Florida resident was going to be moderating this, I wasn't going to turn it down.
And everyone brags
Tucker,
about being
just
from
for the
Florida
record,
now.
Tucker cannot hack the Florida summer, so he is not there over the summer, but in the cooler months he's there, and I think you enjoy it.
The Florida summer is the penance you pay for February. But I love it. So congratulations on everything you've been doing. You signed a ban on abortion after 6 weeks in Florida. Would you do the same as president nationally?
Well, I'm very proud to say Kim Reynolds is here, and she signed a great heartbeat bill today. We were able to do that in Florida. We had a lot of opposition to that. I'm proud to have been a pro-life governor, and I will be a pro-life president. So, I mean, of course I want to sign pro-life legislation. I think it's something that we need to develop a culture of life in this country. If you look over the last 50 years, we allowed practices that were barbaric. Post-birth abortion. Abortion when you have a fully formed baby 6-7 months in. And I don't think Rome's built in a day. I think it's going to take time to make progress in some parts of the country. But as president, I will be somebody who will use the bully pulpit to support governors like Kim Reynolds when she's got a bill, other states as they advance the cause of life. It is a critical issue, and it's one I'm happy to have done. And oh, by the way, this is an issue where I had a lot of supporters who were averse to me on this. Donors saying they didn't want to support me if I stood for life. It's been written about how I lost a lot of really big supporters. Some of them just aren't pro-life. Some of them think it's a political liability. And at the end of the day, you get into office to be able to do what's right. And you've got to stand on principle, and you've got to say, why am I here? If you're here to contort yourself into a pretzel, to try to not have to take on big issues, to take the political road that's easier traveled, then you're not somebody that's dependable. So we stood up, we did what was right. Yeah, we lost some support as a result of that, but if I had a chance to do it again, I'd do it every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
So can you, so what you're saying is people need to be brought over to that. I mean, you have to govern by consensus. In a democracy, you have to convince people. So can you just give us your quick pitch, your speaking to someone of goodwill and good faith, a decent person who has a different position from you on abortion, how do you bring them to your position? What do you say?
Well, look, I think that one of the most impactful moments of my life was with my better half right over there, the first child we had very early in the pregnancy. We're going in, getting an ultrasound, and I hear this whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. I'm like, what is that? That's your daughter's heartbeat. Wow. That changed me. I mean, I was pro-life at the time, but that really had an impact on me. And with science and technology, I think we have brought more people over. But at the end of the day, to do what Governor Reynolds just signed or what we did in Florida, a baby that has a detectable heartbeat, that is a life. And we're better off when everybody counts. We're better off when everybody's given a chance. And so we should stand for life.
Amen. So, I don't know if this is like too parochial to bring up here, but all of America is moving to Florida, so this is like an issue. We've reduced all environmental concerns to climate, but there's still an actual environment, and Florida has a red tide problem that seems to be getting worse, and then there's some indication that it's hurting people neurologically, and it seems like kind of a disaster. What can be done about that?
Well, we've actually created an infrastructure in Florida, and I think it's a good thing because like the Democrats and the left, they talk about global warming, they're going to change the climate. Them forcing you an electrical vehicle is not going to change the climate when China is building a new coal plant every week. I mean, so just give me the break. This is trying to control your behavior, it's social engineering, and it's not something that's going to work. So what I've said in Florida is, okay, Democrats, I'm actually going to focus on the environment that Floridians like and enjoy, and that makes our state unique. So we tackled both blue-green algae, Everglades restoration, and red tide. We've created infrastructures and task force. We have money that will go in to do. So there's a lot of experiments being done on red tide right now with the program we put in, but you have to make a decision. Maybe it works in a lab, but if you do it out in the Gulf of Mexico, is it going to have any other cascading effects? So that's what they're studying right now. We think that there's some things that are going to be very good. Now, red tide is natural. I think most people know that. It's been detected going back into the 1800s. But what can we do to mitigate it, and what can we do to prevent being exacerbated? But we've done very well on environment, not because I'm doing kooky liberal things, but because I'm focusing on things that actually impact the daily lives of Floridians. And oh, by the way, I've never come to Iowa without someone coming up to me that they tell me they spend time in Marco Island or Sarasota or wherever, and I see half the Midwest down in Southwest Florida during the winter months.
And that's a good thing. But when you see half of New Jersey down there, does that make you worry?
So here's the truth. When I became governor, and I was born and raised in Florida, I had never seen a California license plate in the state of Florida in my life. And all of a sudden, we start seeing California plates. My supporters are like, uh-oh, who are these people? Because remember, I may have won by 20 points in November, but usually Florida races were 1%. So if you bring in 50,000 Californians, 50,000 people from New York, all of a sudden, it could be a blue state. We would have supporters go to supermarkets in like Palm Beach, find every New York or New Jersey license plate, put a flyer in the windshield and say, do not vote down here the way they vote up there. But what ended up happening was, I think we drew people who believed in what we were doing. It wasn't just these were liberals who just wanted no state income tax. There may have been some of those, but I think most of these people said, you know what? Florida's a free state. I'm not dealing with these lockdowns. Florida has kids in school. I'm not going to not have my kids be able to be in school. Florida has a 50-year low in the crime rate. I don't want to see rioting in my neighborhood. So there were a whole bunch of reasons why people did it, but the political orientation of it actually turned out pretty good.
So you're getting the good ones.
We're getting good ones. And you know what? We're converting people too. I mean, that's, I think, something that we have to do as a movement. You can't just preach only to the choir. I want to get some other people who may not have voted Republican in the past and get them on our team. And we've done that in Florida in record numbers. And I think it can be done across the country. We're up against a movement that is parroting woke ideology, that their message to the American people is that men can get pregnant. Really? That you should swim on the men's swim team for 3 years, switch to the women's team, and you can be the women's national champion? Most people don't buy that. And so I think we have an opportunity to really capture a lot of voters by representing a platform of common sense and sanity and traditional American values.
Amen. So as president, you'd be in charge pretty much single-handedly of America's foreign policy. So with that in mind, I have to ask you about Ukraine. So in the spring, you described the war in Ukraine as a, quote, territorial dispute. You issued a statement saying it was a territorial dispute that was not central to America's national interest. There was an outcry over this, and then pretty soon after you seemed to change your view and describe Putin as a war criminal and say that it was central to America's foreign policy. Why did you change, and where are you now?
So the last part I did not say. I served in Iraq during the Iraq campaign in Fallujah. I was attached to U.S. Navy SEAL Team 1. And remember, it started on WMD. Then we had al-Qaeda in Iraq. Then it was create a democracy. Then it was that. And so the lesson that I learned from there is if you're going to commit to do military, whether it's aid or whether it's troops, you need to have a concrete idea of what you're trying to achieve. And so from the time I got out of the sandbox and landed back in the United States 15 years ago until the present, I've always felt that. And so my critique of the DC foreign policy elite is that they are doing a blank check policy without telling us when we will have achieved our objective. And I believe that today, and I believe that then. Now, because you dissent from the DC foreign policy elite, they then try to smear you and say, oh, you must be for Putin. I've always thought Putin's a bad guy. I still think he's a bad guy, but that's a separate question for a leader who's got to look at the world in very clear-eyed glasses. You know that it's not all peaches and cream out there, and you have to make a judgment about what's in America's national interest. And so that's the position that I believe, and I also believe that I wish the DC elites cared as much about our border as they do about the Ukraine-Russia border. Because there's people pouring into this country. We have people dying from fentanyl overdose. The cartels are running the show. And what I've said is this is something on day one declare a national emergency, mobilize all resources, including the military, stop the invasion, yes, build the wall, but most importantly, authorize the Border Patrol, authorize our military to deal with the cartels. If they're breaking into our country, bringing product, if I'm in charge, that's going to be the last thing they do, because they're going to end up stone cold dead.
Amen. So what, we can just go back.
You
had a great critique. So what is the goal, do you think, in Ukraine? When do we know we've achieved it?
They will not define it. And
what do you think it should be?
I think the goal should be to have a sustainable peace in Europe. Okay, we don't want there to be war breaking out. There have been a lot of people that have been killed, displaced. It's a horrible thing. But you have to provide an articulation of where you're going to go to get there. And my fear is right now is they're basically doing an open-ended conflict. This is going to be a multi-year quagmire. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to die, and there's not going to be much facts change on the ground. And the dispute at this point, or the war at this point, is not whether Ukraine's government is going to fall. They're fighting over territory on the far eastern part of the country between Russia and Ukraine, and that's kind of where this is at. So the question is, okay, how do you get that to where we can stop this? And also, from our national interest, this is humiliating for our country that we're running out of ammunition. They're now trying to mobilize troops, U.S. troops, to go to Europe when we have a major threat in the Indo-Pacific, the Chinese Communist Party, who they're basically given a free pass to. As president, I would prioritize the threats to our national security. The top threat to this country is China. It's China's ambitions, it's China's industrial capacity, it's the CCP's ability to pollute our culture, impact our universities. Incidentally, in Florida, we got rid of the Confucius Institutes that they put in universities. We cracked down on them being able to do research dollars to our universities, and we banned any purchase of land by the CCP in the state of Florida.
So given that
the thing, though. You have to do what's based on our interests. You can't subcontract out our interests to a foreign leader. You can't want it to go on because it'll be good for defense contractors or, globalist investors. It's all about what's in our interests. And I think we're basically in a situation with our foreign policy. We're providing a blanket security to Europe. They're not paying their fair share, and we're not doing what we need to do to project power in the Pacific. At the end of the day, the CCP respects hard power. And I'm concerned that, because a strong America can deter conflict, I think a weak America may be on the path to inviting conflict with China. And if we continue to be weak abroad and allow our culture to deteriorate here at home, we can have a situation where our kids or grandkids are studying, memorizing 37 different pronouns in Mandarin, and we can't have that. So we've got to do better as a country. We need to reverse the decline of this country because it is happening very, very quickly.
So you inherit this mess a year and a half from now, say, and let's just say it's static, it's where it is right now. What do you do about it? How do you act?
One, Europe needs to do more. This is their backyard. We have NATO countries that don't produce support for their own defenses, and we're supposed to do it, and we're taking away weapons and ammo that could go to respond to contingencies overseas. So we would do more in terms of the Pacific, and the goal should be to bring it to a conclusion. You bring it to a conclusion in a way that's a sustainable peace and that doesn't reward aggression, and you have to be able to use different levers that you have. I mean, for example, one of the leverages I would use vis-a-vis Russia is I would do our own energy exploration and send it over to Europe so they don't have to rely on Putin. I would stop giving Iran a free pass like Biden is because they're funding Russia. So we have some ability to use this, but the goal should be we cannot have a quagmire that goes on for years and years. And seeing Biden put those troops there, I can tell you, we cannot have American troops in Ukraine. That is a total non-starter.
So why, I mean, you've got a whole Congress, and there are a ton of Republicans there. They claim they run the House. I haven't heard anybody say that. Why?
Well, no, I think some of them tried to say that there should be.
Yeah, they lost badly. I think they got 33 votes.
They did, but I think there are some people that said you need to define the mission before you're able to send any American tax dollars over. No, by the way, they haven't even been able to account for all this. So we don't know who's coming across the southern border. We don't know where all the money sent to Ukraine has gone. We don't know whose cocaine it was in the White House. I mean,
what's your guess on that? I'm sorry, I mean.
Let me put it this way. We have issues in Florida with parents' rights, and they're trying to put pornography in the schools. I think a lot of you have seen this. It's sad that this is the case. We allow the parents to blow the whistle. You can get it out. And our message to people has basically been like, look, adult material does not belong in a 5th grade classroom. You know, if you want to see the pornography, just check out Hunter's laptop. I'm sure you can have that till your heart's content.
Is that available in your schools?
Hopefully not.
My kids are older, I don't know. So how concerned are you that in the wake of whatever the next economic disruption that we're going to face is, and everyone kind of feels like maybe there's something coming, that will wind up with digital currency issued by the central bank?
Well, if I am the president on day one, we will nix central bank digital currency. Done, dead, not happening in this country. In the state of Florida, because the Fed has been talking about this.
Oh, yeah.
And what the Fed said was, well, you know, we wouldn't do it without consulting the legislative and executive branches. Ideally, we would get a law passed. No. That's not how the Constitution says. It's only ideal that you get a law passed. You would have to get a law passed. I don't think Congress would pass that. So I think the Fed may try to do something unilaterally. So what we did in Florida is we basically passed a law that says we do not recognize CBDC in the state of Florida. And I think other states are probably going to follow suit. That will jam their ability to do it through executive action. They don't have authority to do it. There'd be lawsuits and everything. For those who don't know what CBDC is, what they want to do, and this is tied in with like Davos, World Economic Forum, all these people. They want the Fed, they want to get rid of cash. They want no cryptocurrency, and they want this to be the sole form of legal tender. And they have said this publicly at like Davos and these other places. It will allow them to prohibit, quote, undesirable purchases like fuel and ammunition. And so the minute you give them the power to do this, they are going to impose a social credit system on this country. CBDC is a massive threat to American liberty. On January 20th, 2025, it goes to the ash heap of history in this country.
So if you were to become president, and previous presidents have discovered this, so you and the vice president too, but you're the only elected leaders in an executive branch that's the largest human organization in history. Millions of people, work for you. And a lot of them just hate you because they're all partisan Democrats. And they work to subvert you from day one. And again, we've just seen this at scale. What do you do about that? Like, what do you do about the FBI or the CIA or agencies that are heavily armed and have intel capacities that you don't have, and like they're vast? How do you manage that?
With me on day one, you get a new director of the FBI. We need that. That's going to happen. So I think a couple things. One, there are thousands of positions in the executive branch that are appointed by the president. You got to have all those people ready to go to be submitted to the Senate in January of 2025. You can't wait 2 years to fill all the positions because then these career bureaucrats, they just take over. So you got to have your people in there on day one. You also have to have certain character of people. Like if you're the Attorney General, everything you do to deal with the DOJ, end the weaponization of government, deal with the FBI, the press is going to rake you over the coals. The left is going to rake you over the coals. The Democrats, they're all going to rake you over the coals. You either are down for that or you're not. And if you can't handle that, if you don't have the backbone to do that, you will fail at that job. So you need people, and I look at different folks in government, like on the Supreme Court. I would look to Clarence Thomas as the example because he doesn't budge. He doesn't care what the media says about him. They've smeared him 6 ways from Sunday. He does what he thinks is right. So you got to have those people. And then you have levers that you can pull. I believe Article 2 of the Constitution means the president has the executive authority. we just say these bureaucrats somehow can't be held accountable. I disagree with that. I think you can fire them. If we have an FBI agent going to harass a pro-life activist like they did Mark Houck and send a SWAT team, I'd fire them immediately. When you have FBI colluding with big tech to censor dissent, I would fire those people. Had I been president 2020, Anthony Fauci would have been fired, and you've got to be willing to do it.
I mean, the censorship regime in place during the last presidential election, and by the way, I think it remains in place in the federal agencies, telling information providers, the social media companies, what they can and cannot run. No one's been held accountable. Meanwhile, Julian Assange is still in prison thanks to our efforts. Would you pardon him, and would you hold those people violating the First Amendment accountable?
So these people that violated the First Amendment, they need to be held accountable for that. People died as a result of that because they were censoring truthful information about COVID that if people would have adopted those policies, the country would have been better off. Individual states would have been better off. And so I think it had a profound effect. The fact that they censored dissent on COVID meant some kids got locked out of school for a year. The fact that they censored dissent on COVID meant that some people took some of these booster shots when they didn't need to, and they ended up having an adverse reaction. So it had major, major impact. So I think not just with the censorship, I think everything involving COVID, I think there needs to be major, major accountability, because if there's not, if you don't have a reckoning, they are going to do it again. They are going to do it again. Now, in terms of using pardon, my goal is to end the weaponization of government. And that involves firing people. It involves taking parts of the DOJ and putting them in other states. Iowa, if you guys want a part of the DOJ, I'll send it out here, send it to Alabama, wherever. And we're going to do that. We're going to take power out of Washington. But part of what you need to do, if you have a two-tiered system of justice, you need to make sure if there's some people that got away that shouldn't have, they need to face the music. And if there are other people that are getting targeted through abuse of government, then there needs to be use of the pardon power. So the day after the election, we're going to open up an ability for people to submit applications, ask for the pardon based on whether they were treated dissimilarly or whether the government mobilized against them. And so we're going to do it the front end of the administration. I'm not going to wait till my last day in office. Do it the front end. And if people are doing that, and that's part of ensuring a single standard of justice, we will be willing to use the pardon power. It's going to be done on a case-by-case basis because I'm a governor, and I've actually had to look at these things, and you owe it to everybody to do that. But we will be issuing pardons, and that'll be determined based on the facts and circumstances at the time.
We know that the U.S. government reads the private communications of American citizens by the tens of millions without a warrant. And everyone knows this. It's been revealed. They've admitted it. And no one has moved to stop it. Do you think that there's a good reason to allow this? How can that be?
No. I mean, I think the federal government has a responsibility to protect us from foreign threats. We're going to have intelligence capabilities overseas, but to turn those on our own citizens, especially with this government's behavior, is totally untenable. I am going to go in and declassify or put as much stuff out as I can. I think that you guys have a right to know things that happened 60, 70 years ago that the government's kept under wraps. Now, obviously...
What?
Obviously, if things that are more recent, if there's stuff, I mean, you have to make those judgments. But my default is going to be that they're going to have a high burden to justify why it shouldn't be public for some of these main things that we all talk about that have occurred in the past, because the government uses classification as a way to evade accountability for itself. I think there is a legitimate use of classified information, but it's like what should be classified and what actually is like so much more. And so it's all about protecting their power. But it's a huge, huge problem in how they've conducted this. And to turn the government on the American people, that's the founding fathers' worst nightmare.
So let me just end with a shallow question based on speculation. Do you think Biden will be the Democratic nominee?
Honestly, I go back and forth because as an incumbent president, unless he's willing to step aside, I don't think they can get him out of there. On the other hand, I'm fully prepared to have a Florida-California showdown and let the people choose what's the better vision for the United States of America, because I'm very confident that the freedom in Florida is what more people would choose rather than the public defecation on the streets of San Francisco.
Governor Ron DeSantis, for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. God bless.
You know, you don't hear the word defecation used that much in political speeches, but it's 2023, so welcome to it. That was Ron DeSantis, of course, governor of Florida. And, you know, it's an interesting thing that we've seen here today. This event, we all know that Donald Trump is the leader right now. He's leading by a lot. And at some level, we're, of course, disappointed that he wasn't able to make it. But on another level, I think it's interesting because this is an event about looking at who else is out there, who else is available, who else can pull, a speech off like this, an interview with tough questions from Tucker Carlson, and look and try to impress an audience in that position. I think Ron DeSantis did a pretty good job there. I think if you look at the arc of the day, it started on a weaker side. Tim Scott was all right, but then we got into Asa Hutchinson, maybe down on the low side. And I think it's improved as we've gone along. And we should take a minute to think about what a great job Tucker Carlson has done here. He's had to do all of those interviews with all of those different candidates. It was a heck of a lot to ask of him, and he was able to do that. Now, he's not done. He has to go through this entire day and then come back and now have another interview with Glenn Beck. Now, you got to be a BlazeTV subscriber to see this part of it. And I'll tell you, if you liked what you saw today, if you watched this event and said, wow, I've never seen anything like that. All these candidates being asked actual important, tough questions. An audience that was there paying attention. You got to see more from these candidates than you've seen this entire election. If you like what we've done here, realize this was a big effort. And the only way that we can do things like that is with your help. BlazeMediaSummit.com is the place to go. Right now, they're doing a special deal. This is as much as I've ever seen them take off an annual subscription, $30 off right now if you use the code SUMMIT at checkout. We really encourage you to do that. If you got something out of this today, it's something that's really important. And, you don't have to live with mainstream media coverage anymore. We wind up taking, we take a beating from the mainstream media all the time. And I, at times we're like an abused spouse. We just keep coming back over and over again. Please treat us better next time. You don't need that anymore. BlazeTV is here, and we're going to do our best to give you actual coverage that you care about. BlazeMediaSummit.com. The code is SUMMIT to save $30. I have Sarah Gonzalez, Delano Squires here with me. We just watched Ron DeSantis. He's obviously in second place, the leader of this event, polling-wise, by a decent amount. How did you think he did today, Sarah?
I mean, he did how I expected him to do, which was solid. He is a solid contender. He has a very strong background, obviously, in solving problems in his state, and I think we need to give credit where credit is due. He transformed Florida. I try to mention this every time we talk about Ron DeSantis. He took a state that he barely won by, it was less than a percentage point against Andrew Gillum, a candidate that we found out later on was a really bad guy.
I think it might have been his cocaine at the White House.
It may have been. I don't know. I think he's into meth, though, so maybe not. But, you take this guy who won by just barely, not even a percentage point, and you see what he has done to transform Florida. I mean, it is nothing short of incredible. So I think we do need to give credit where credit is due. Now, you brought up Trump. I really do wish, I understand not every candidate can make every event, right? I understand that. You have things going on. However, Trump seems to shine in these one-on-one interviews. Say what you will about him on the debate stage, and I realize he has these zingers that everyone is a big fan of, and I'm not saying that I'm not a fan of them, but one-on-one, take the CNN town hall that he did when he sat down with the CNN correspondent, Caitlin Collins, and he was able to create an adversarial relationship that people really liked. But I think here he could have sat down one-on-one and created a friendly, warm relationship where DeSantis got to go out there and give the jokes about the Hunter Biden laptop, which was funny and relatable, and everyone liked it, and it was a really good moment for him. But I would have liked to have seen those moments from Donald Trump, because I think that people need to be reminded. I understand he's the front runner, but as many times as you can, remind people, I am the best one in this entire circuit. And I just wish that we would have seen that. Again, I understand you can't make it, but seeing those moments between DeSantis and Tucker Carlson and seeing the bantering moments, I think that Donald Trump really would have shined there.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have done very well in the crowd. I'm sure would have been into it. It was interesting watching, though, all of these candidates. And, DeSantis had a lot at risk here as compared to maybe the other candidates. Everyone else really only had winning as a possibility. Yeah. You can't blow up an Asa Hutchinson campaign, right? It's
at 2%, there's nowhere to go but up.
Right. Exactly. And I think maybe if you look at pure performance of all of these candidates, you might say Vivek Ramaswamy was maybe the best as just energy and message. But DeSantis, I don't think, did anything to hurt himself here today. And I thought he was solid. The separation point between a Vivek and Ron DeSantis is past performance, right? I mean, as you point out, going from 0.4 a victory in Florida to 21 points is a massive thing. We've basically taken what used to be the most important purple state and turned it into a red state under his watch. That's huge, and it's even more important than what you can do in a speech. Though I thought he did pretty well in this interview. Delano, what did you think about his performance?
Yeah, I think he acquitted himself well. I don't think he hurt himself at all. It was good to hear him talk about standing for life. I think that played well in the room. Again, obviously because of the bill that Governor Reynolds just signed. And I think his answers on Ukraine probably, again, landed well, talking about wanting D.C. elites to care as much about our border as they do about Ukraine's border. So I don't think he did anything to hurt himself. It was interesting, his comments on sort of right-sizing the federal government, new FBI director, moving certain agencies out of D.C. and into other parts of the country. Again, I don't think he did anything to hurt himself, but like Sarah, I wish the former president would have been here. I can't wait to see them on a debate stage because I believe in sort of a robust competition of ideas. Let iron sharpen iron so that we get the best candidate at the end.
Amen. That's incredibly important. I'm going to go over to Steve Deace. Steve, this was an interesting conversation here today. You get the sense with DeSantis that when he's talking about domestic policy, when he's talking about how to run a government, he knows it. He knows it really, really well. When you get over to Ukraine, it's maybe a bit of a second language to him, though he's trying to find his message there. Did he do enough on that issue for you?
I don't think that this audience is on Ukraine where probably I am at, Tucker is at, and most of the conservative Twitter sphere is at. I think it's probably more of people that are very sympathetic to what has happened to the Ukrainians and is probably fine doing almost anything possible to beat Vladimir Putin other than endless money and also putting troops on the ground. Also, Ron DeSantis has got to put together a coalition of people of the other, whether it's 51-49 one way or the other, or 50-50. There's another plurality or majority of Republican voters in those same polls we all keep citing because they're always correct all the time. There's a plurality majority of those people that don't want Trump as the nominee. And so you got to figure out what's the message that they want to hear. And so I think he's trying to walk a fine line. Plus, there's an unfair advantage. I mean, Trump is just getting away with saying, I'd bring the war to an end in a day. Well, how? And since he wasn't here, Tucker didn't get to ask him the follow-up questions that he got to ask Ron DeSantis, so we don't know. I think, and I've said this, I've been consistent on this all day long, I thought he had to hit a home run. I thought there was an immense amount of pressure on Ron DeSantis. I thought the only one that had pressure on them today was Ron DeSantis. And I think that we need to absolutely give him credit. I thought that he was very good. And I think he got stronger as it went on. The line about defecation in the streets in San Francisco will hang, pardon the pun, it will linger. Yeah, I'm here all week, try the veal. Okay, but if I were on his team, I'd feel very confident that we took advantage of an opportunity the former president, as Sarah said, should not have given us. And we're going to walk out of here, I think, casting a shadow and showing that we are clearly the only other serious candidate in this race. I would be excited. And you could kind of see, I know, Delano, you know your hoops too. I see you post about it on Twitter. Guys get that strut, going down the other side of the court when they hit a big shot. You can kind of see him do that a few times in the chair. Yeah, I stuck that one. I got that one. Okay. He kind of felt it. He was feeling himself a little bit as it went on, and you could see that. And so he did what he had to do. He had to hit a home run. Now, it may not have been a tape measure shot. This might not have been Reggie Jackson on the roof of Tiger Stadium at the 71 All-Star game. It might have been more like, Mark McGuire's record where it barely got over the wall. But it went over the wall, and he's touching them all nevertheless. And I think you should give him credit for stepping into the arena, facing that pressure, and delivering.
All right, I think you have do you have Matt and Aaron over with you?
I do.
Okay.
Or actually, we got Jill and Aaron. Jill, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I look at this, and I think that Ron DeSantis was able to differentiate himself against Donald Trump in 3 different areas. One, the first thing that he hit on was abortion. And yes, Donald Trump could come out and say, I am the president that gave you the Supreme Court justices that overturned Roe v. Wade. But since then, Donald Trump has been questioning, is 6 weeks, is this really what we need to have in the country? That might be a little too harsh. What Ron DeSantis was able to come out and do was speak to a crowd that was very receptive to this message, with Kim Reynolds already signing the bill into law earlier today with the heartbeat bill. That was a positive moment for him. The second one is COVID. One of his best lines was, you have to have the ability to fire Fauci. You have to follow through with actually doing it. That is a big differentiating point for Ron DeSantis over Donald Trump, is following through with COVID and the messaging there. And the third thing is gaining votes. Ron DeSantis came out and said that he is going to try and expand the base. We are going up against woke ideology. I will figure out a way to do that. And Steve had him on the show yesterday. Ron DeSantis came out and said, Miami-Dade, look at that. Look at what I was able to do there. It was a county that was plus 30 for Hillary Clinton. I won it by double digits in my reelection. I will be able to do that in these swing states moving forward. I want to hear him reiterate that message going forward every time, because we all know Donald Trump has a ceiling. You either love him or you hate him. But if you believe that they stole the 2020 election from him, how are you planning on getting the votes necessary to win the 2024 election? Those 3 things to me were the biggest issues that Ron DeSantis was able to really knock home.
I want to go to Aaron McIntyre here in just a second. We also have Glenn Beck, who's up on stage right now. He's getting ready. You see him for the interview with Tucker Carlson, for really a marathon day for Tucker and Glenn. Who they're both up there. Tucker will be up there in just a minute. Just a reminder, if you are a BlazeTV subscriber, you can get this interview as part of your subscription. Go to blazemediasummit.com. The code is SUMMIT. It'll save you $30 off your annual subscription. Let's go back to Aaron McIntyre now. Aaron, you saw the DeSantis speech. He's obviously the guy in the number 2 position right here, needed to do something here to try to break up the race a little bit. How did he do?
I think it was a strong showing. I think that he did some of the things he needed to do. He managed to, I think, throw that kind of elbow at Trump with the you need to fire Fauci without actually going directly at him. That's the kind of thing that he definitely needed to do. He had some strong lines when he talked about the military at the border right away. When he talked about that kind of stuff, he definitely got the reaction in the room. I do think that there were some spots that could have been stronger. I would have liked to hear not just, we need to think about how we're funding Ukraine. It was good to hear that we're no troops on the ground, no boots on the ground. That was good. I think that was a more clear message than he had sent in the past. But I think he would have scored big points with a good section of the base by just saying, we're not funding this. No blank checks for these people. It's over with this. This is not our battle. I think that he could have been a little stronger there. Also things like pardoning Julian Assange. Like you said, when he's in that domestic range, he's very strong. He knows what he's talking about. He has the track record. He's very comfortable there, and he should feel strong in that moment. But when he comes to some of those foreign policy issues, when he's kind of untested, it feels like he's still not committal, and I think the base does want to hear strong answers one way or another in some of those issues.